Welcome to today's show. I am your host, Bart Voss. Today's topic, the Electoral College. I thought this would be an appropriate topic for today's episode as we approach the 2020 election. Looks like we're going to have one Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. What I wanted to focus on today, though, is a broad scope. What is it? Then why was it formed in the first place? Who the heck are these electors? And then why do we keep on using this system? The Electoral Colleges is what is called an indirect popular election, where the population goes, we vote for the President of the United States, but then electors actually cast the vote for the President on our behalf. So we're not directly voting for the President. It's the electors that are casting these votes on our behalf to elect the President of the United States. We're going to stop right there, more on it, but we're actually going to rewind all the way to why it was actually formed in the first place. It was implemented going all the way back to the Constitutional Congress. Our founding fathers set this system up for a number of reasons, two main ones I could find. The first was they were concerned that the people of the country weren't going to have enough information to make informed decisions on the president. It's not the situation that we're in today, where we have the internet, we have all these avenues to gain information. They just didn't have it back then, so they were worried that that information wouldn't be out to the population so that they could cast a proper vote. The second reason I was able to find more information on, and it was James Madison in particular that had this second concern, and he was worried that by going to a popular vote, different factions would form within the population, and that these factions would grow to be more than 50% of the population, and those groups then in turn could basically cast any bill, push any law through, do anything that they wanted, regardless if it followed the Constitution or not. So by using these electors, they were able to put in a system where votes could be cast on what the quote-unquote sense of the nation was instead of what the mob wanted, or what these different factions might want if it was created. What is really interesting about this, though, is it only took until the third presidential election, which would have been the second president, for this to fall on its face. By that time, there was already national campaigns and political parties that made this whole thing fall on its face. And the whole reason it was created, to avoid these factions, already didn't matter. We already had political parties that were just throwing this thing into upheaval. At the Constitutional Congress, though, this wasn't the only system that was proposed. There actually was a nationwide popular vote system that was proposed, along with election by Congress, by state governors, and by state legislators. All these things were proposed as different ways to elect the president. Let's look at those electors specifically, though. How the heck are these people chosen for these positions? There's 538 of them in total, and the math to get there, actually pretty simple. It's the 2 senators from every state, plus the number of members of the House of Representatives that each state has. Now, the congressmen aren't actually the electors. That's just how we get to the number of them that each state has. Generally, the electors are chosen by the state's political parties. This might be based off of years of service, commitment to the party, whatever it might be, the state parties are choosing who those electors are going to be. So when you go and vote for the president, you're actually voting on which party's electors you're going to let cast a vote on your behalf. There is a mini catch to all of this, though. And that catch is they're not required to vote the same way that you vote. When they do that and they vote for somebody else other than what the population wanted, that's what's called a faithless elector. And in all of history, in all of the elections, there's only been 167 faithless electors ever. 71 of them get a free pass because it was due to the presidential candidate dying before they could cast their vote. Can't hold it against them. But in history, 167 total. In case you were wondering, because I was, in the 2016 election with Donald Trump, there were actually 7 faithless electors in that election. Doesn't shake out how you would have thought, not the way I thought it was going to be. 5 of them actually went against Hillary Clinton, where those electoral votes went to somebody other than her. Only 2 of them went against Donald Trump, which it was just a surprising thing for me to see. When these electors are casting their votes, though, the magic number that you need to get to, and you guys know this number from watching TV, it's 270 votes. That's the number of electoral votes you need to get elected president. And that is the 538 total votes that you need divided by 2 plus 1. You need to have a majority in order to be elected president. 270 votes total. We as the population go vote. We hit the polling places in November. 1 month later in December is when the electors are casting their votes. Generally by that time it's pretty much a formality, but nonetheless that is when they are casting their votes. If, however, at that point the 270 votes are not reached, ultimately it would fall to the House of Representatives to make the selection and vote on who the next president of the United States would be. Now we know what the Electoral College is, and we know how the electors are chosen. I want to look at next the opponents to it though, because there's an interesting fact with the Electoral College in that there has been over 700 different proposals to abolish or amend the Electoral College since it was put in front of Congress during the Constitutional Congress. That's more than any other topic in the history of our government. The most widely cited solution would be to go to a popular voting system. Proponents of this system think that it solves a couple of different things. The first is it creates a system where everybody's vote counts the same. Where currently if you're a Democrat in Oklahoma or you're a Republican in California, essentially your vote doesn't matter. States are winner take all, so if you're voting Republican in California, your vote more or less never going to count. By going to a popular system, everybody's vote across the country is going to count the same. The second reason that you most widely see cited is that it gets rid of swing states. And you know what those are. That's the Floridas and Ohios of the world. And ultimately, the president's chosen by these 5 or 6 swing states that could go one way or the other, where California is always going to vote Democrat, Oklahoma is always going to be Republican, and these swing states are choosing the president. By going to a popular voting system, it counts everybody's vote towards who is going to be the next president. While certainly this could change the voting dynamic in the country, one thing I found really interesting is there's only actually been 5 times in the history of the Electoral College where the popular vote winner didn't also win the Electoral College. 3 of them you got to go back a long ways. 1824, John Quincy Adams, 1876, Rutherford B. Hayes, and 1888, Benjamin Harrison. Fast forward all the way to the year 2000, you got George W. Bush over Al Gore. We all remember the hanging chads. And then in 2016 with Donald Trump beating Hillary Clinton. What is really interesting about that Donald Trump win was even though he lost the popular vote, he dominated the Electoral College. In total, he won 306 Electoral College votes compared to Hillary Clinton's 232. He carried 30 total states. 8 of those 30 he carried actually went to Barack Obama in the previous election. Looking at the biggest landslide in history though, not counting George Washington and his 2 unanimous victories to start things off, you have to go to 1936, and this is Franklin Roosevelt, and he actually beat the challenger Alf Landon 523-8. Landon only won 2 states, Vermont and Maine. The popular vote went to Franklin Roosevelt 61% to 37%. It was the biggest landslide in history. Not something I'm sure Alf Landon is too proud of. The closest competition ever on the flip side was actually in 2000 with that George Bush-Al Gore election we were talking about. George Bush won 271 to 266 in the Electoral College. He cleared the threshold by just a single vote. At any rate, though, those were some of the reasons why proponents of a popular voting system want to get rid of the Electoral College. Why do people want to keep it? Well, the most often cited case is in 1992. You have to go back to when Bill Clinton beat President George Bush Sr. He dominated the Electoral College, won a majority of the votes. However, in the popular vote, he only won 43%. If you remember, Ross Perot was also running that year as the third-party candidate, and he actually got 19% of the popular vote. This third-party scenario creates several potential outcomes that are weird in a popular voting situation. The first is Clinton didn't win a majority of the popular vote, or 51% of the votes. In that situation, what do? Does it go to the House of Representatives to decide who becomes the president? Who decides it at that point in time? Then if you say, well, it doesn't need to be a majority then, it just has to be the person who gets the most votes, the fear is that the presidential election is going to be flooded with third-party candidates all trying to snipe votes from your primary party candidates. Think about the primary season and how crazy those can get. Put that into an actual presidential election where that many people are running for president. That is the primary reason most people want to keep the electoral party system. Bringing things to a close though, what do we know now? We know what the electoral system is, why it was formed, what the electors are, and why we keep using it today. It's a good review going into the election, and I hope you were able to learn something today from this. That's all, and thank you for joining us. As always, I am your host, Bart Voss, and this has been today's topic.